Stopping at the log where catfish bite, walking along the river road at night. Barefoot girls
The theme is really very important, especially when you're looking at your overall story of how this city has developed. And there would be none of us sitting here in this room. There would be no building to be sitting in except for our relationship to the Ohio River. It is unique among all river communities and kind of special, I think. Beargrass Creek, through much of our history, flowed into the river right where the Belle of Louisville is docked today, right between 3rd and 4th Street. And it cut off the natural relationship between the river's edge and Main Street, the commercial part of the town. You had to deal with Beargrass Creek. It was a beautiful creek in the early days, flowed out of the highlands, crystal clear, about 80 feet wide. It made an ideal safe harbor. This was the best natural harbor on the inland river system. Boats could come in, pull into Beargrass Creek, and go all the way up to Preston Street. One of the challenges was, how do you get access to the most valuable property in this community, which was the river's edge? And so there were a number of small bridges built over Beargrass Creek, about 5 altogether. This is actually, you see in 1839, the first Louisville gas manufacturer, and that was up at near Preston Street. In the 1850s, the city had realized that Beargrass Creek forming a barrier from the river's edge to the Main Street was a really serious and ongoing problem. One of the great problems is that industries located adjacent to and used Beargrass Creek as its sewage system. And unfortunately, a great number of those were located in a place called Butchertown, and it literally flowed red with blood, coming out into the middle of your city. And so a visionary, a truly visionary local leader who we have forgotten, Mayor James Speed, in 1854, had the political will to remove Beargrass Creek, to in fact move it to where it is today, cut about a half a mile outlet channel out to the river, and then filled in Beargrass Creek, which for the first time really made the Louisville waterfront part of the city. This is the community in 1856, looking from over the Indiana side. In 1856, 3,000 steamboats landed at the port of Louisville. It was the busiest inland port in America, most important inland port in America. And the steamboats were such an important part. The first steamboat landed in Louisville in 1811, the New Orleans, and it changed everything. The late George Yater, wonderful historian, said that the river made Louisville a town. The steamboat made Louisville a city. And it was the servicing of the steamboat industry, building steamboats, maintaining steamboats, building places like the Galt House, and we've had 3 of these Galt Houses throughout our history. Though that manufacturing and that commerce generated by serving the river trade really did dictate what this community has done and still does in a lot of ways. The river has a number of functions. The river edge has a number of functions. Some of you folks in here probably remember when you'd go down on the 4th Street Wharf and you'd see these big ring bots that were buried in, and the boats would tie up against them. But it was river industries and the warehouses, the hotels, the cartage that produced the wealth for this community. Up until 1825, the stipulation was we'd have to go down Main Street to around 15th Street, hook up with Portland Avenue, and go down to the Portland Wharf, which is below the Falls of the Ohio, and you had safe passage again. To transport a piece of materials from the Louisville waterfront to New Orleans waterfront, if it cost you $100, it cost $33 just to get it to Portland. It formed a tariff in sort of ways. So in 1825, the commencement of building a remarkably important advancement, the Louisville-Portland Canal. That was finally finished in 1830, but it is today, the Louisville and Portland Canal handles more tonnage than any other canal system in the world. 77 million tons last year, something like that. It was a phenomenal amount of money. But also we had, it formed things like our first 2 hospitals were marine hospitals, Louisville Marine and U.S. Marine Hospital served mariners. That was what made this town go. This was the first really important commercial center in the city. This was Gray's Warehouse. It was located right where the Belle of Louisville is today, right at the edge of the point. And it was a place of exchange. It was the first post office in the city. So it would be right down at the end of 4th Street. This is the Louisville waterfront in 1852. If you were standing on Joe's Crab Shack on the porch and looking west, this is the scene you would see. And you see the little bridge in the foreground is actually the 2nd Street Bridge. In 1852, the big controversies in our community were, what do we do for merger, and where are we going to build the 2 new bridges? This is called progress, folks. The merger was the merger between the city of Louisville and the independent township of Portland, which was accomplished in 1852. And the building the bridges, can you build 2 bridges in the same year, were the bridges over the Beargrass, not over the Ohio River. We were not yet ready to do that. And so this was an incredibly bustling, incredibly exciting location. Steamboats landed day and night, around the clock. It was at 4 in the morning, you might have a steamboat pull in, and it was as lively and noisy and exuberant as life can be. And the work that's been done there, we have always, until 1929, we're served by ferry boats. If you wanted to go across to Indiana, you took a ferry. It was 122 years of ferry boat service. The most famous ferry in our community was down the west end, called Fontaine's Ferry. But we had many, many of them up and down the river, and that's how we communicated with each other. We work on the river, but we also enjoy playing on the river. We have records and newspaper accounts back into the 1830s where they had rowing contests where 4,000 and 5,000 people would line the banks. And it was a huge social event and great, great fun. The river certainly carried away the things we made here, but it also brought the world to Louisville's doorstep. And in one of the ways they did this were the circus boats and the show boats. The floating palace in the 1850s would land, and it was a single boat that had 1,100 seats, and they actually had flying trapeze and elephants running around downstairs and a menagerie boat. So much was communicated to us. It brought so many of the immigrants to Kentucky and to Louisville, but it also brought music, and it brought culture, and it brought great theatrical experiences. So the showboats were really a very important part of this community. This is the Louisville waterfront during the Civil War. This is between 4th and 5th Street, when the city was in imminent danger of attack by the Confederacy. They had gotten as close as LaGrange, and the city was panicked. There were no bridges across the river, and how do you evacuate? You literally had your back to the river's wall. They put up 2 pontoon bridges. The Army built 2 pontoon bridges of coal barges. One right exactly where the Big 4 Bridge is today, and the other one in Portland right exactly where the K&I Bridge is today. But those were floating pontoon bridges. We would have a subsequent pontoon bridge 76 years ago when the Great Flood happened. This is the 4th Street Wharf as you're looking up 4th Street. And in those days, and there were no forklifts, manpower loaded and unloaded those incredible boats, those massive, massive boats. The number of warehouses that were needed, the number of dray carts that were needed. But it didn't change much for the first 150 years until mechanized vehicles. But you do see crossing the scene the short line railroad, which many of you all remember when the railroad service went right down to be replaced by I-64. The life-saving station. There is still a life-saving station here, the only inland life-saving service in American history, the only inland Coast Guard station. The one we have today is the 3rd version, the 1929 version. This is the first one, and it was at flood stage. And these fellows that manned this, they manned that little operating observation tower from 1882 to 1972. There was somebody there around the clock, 24 hours a day. And they saved, it's been estimated, at least 5,000 lives from going over the falls. If a boat would lose power and be swept over the falls, you were gone. saved millions and millions and millions of dollars in cargo and in boating. So if you go by today, it is a National Historic Landmark, and it sits adjacent to another National Historic Landmark, the Belle of Louisville, and the life-saving station today are the offices and tickets for the Belle.